The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Finding laughter through the pain. I'm Nam Kiwanuka, and tonight on the Agenda in the Summer, actor and comedian Mae Martin on getting to feel good. At 13, Mae Martin was doing improv at Second City in Toronto, and by 15, winning an award for her comedy. So it's not all that surprising that she's now the creator and star of the terrific Netflix series Feel Good. Yet for all the success, there were certainly bumps along the way. We're very pleased to welcome from London, UK, Mae Martin. Hi, it's so nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you too. Really
I'm
nice
sure you've heard
hear a Canadian accent. It's very comforting.
Well, I'm sure you hear this all the time. I watched Feel Good. I think the first day it came out, and it was really interesting to see how it felt like Canada was like a character in this series. Was that intentional?
Oh, good. I'm really glad. Yeah, it was important to represent Canada, and I've definitely had a kind of fish out of water experience being a Canadian in England, so that was an important part of it. And we had a Canadian director as well, so it made sense.
And we also need to talk about your music sense, because you, in the series, you get a tattoo. Well, your character gets a tattoo of Sum 41.
Yeah. No, that's fictional. Yeah.
That's total fictional. Well, let's take a look at the clip of Feel Good.
Hi guys, I'm from Canada. I came over in a canoe recently with Celine Dion.
Do you want to kiss me, mate?
Oh, that would be so cool. Now?
Yes.
Your father and I want to know if you found a new Narcotics Anonymous meeting.
What meeting?
I'm Mae, I'm an addict.
Where'd you get this?
In jail. As you know, I am an addict.
Jesus.
New me, new life. I have everything under control.
She's always had a very addictive personality. I don't know where she gets that from.
Well,
Are you dating anyone?
I am seeing someone, but she's kind of an asshole, so I don't think it's gonna last. What do you want to know?
Everything?
This show is based on your life. How does your depiction of Mae in this show compare to your real life?
I think that the emotional truth is very, very accurate, but she's kind of dialed up to 100, the depiction of me. So I think in my real life, I'm a little more sordid, and I am not teetering on the edge as much as that character. But she's kind of where I was at about 10 years ago in terms of my relationships and addictive behaviors and things like that. So yeah, but hopefully I think you couldn't write a character of yourself without sort of having the self-awareness, hopefully in retrospect, to do that.
Was there anything that happened to you in your real life that you stayed away from in the series?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we just tried to build a really compelling narrative and take the themes of addiction and love and sexuality and things that really interest me and have affected my life, and then narrativize them. So yeah, lots of stuff in real life that didn't go in, and lots of stuff in it that didn't happen in real life. But there's definitely an emotional truth there that made it quite cathartic and sometimes difficult to film, and ultimately very, very rewarding.
Why cathartic?
I think when you're carrying around, I mean, everybody carries around frustrations and feelings and shame and all kinds of things like that. We all do. And so when you're able to authentically speak them out loud and bring them out of the shadows, and then see them all edited together like that, it's a relief to know that they'll be heard by other people and people will connect to them. And it's nice. It can be alienating not to see your experience reflected on screen. So it's nice to be able to tell your personal story, you know?
By that, what do you mean, not seeing your experience on screen?
I guess with representation is still a big issue. It's rare that I've seen things like my sex life or or my romantic life kind of represented in a real way, where it's authored. This is a queer story authored by a queer person, so there's things in it that I definitely haven't seen before. But I hope also it's a very universal story, and lots of different demographics can relate to it.
The show is not just, to me anyway, it's not just a love story. It's also about what it's like to live with addiction and the challenges and the struggles that come with it. Why did you decide to tell this story this way?
I did a stand-up comedy show about addiction and my experiences with addiction. And I did a lot of research for that show and thought a lot about how we kind of relegate conversations about addiction to substance use. And usually we think of addicts as this small group of people who can't handle their life. And really addictive behavior permeates many aspects of the human experience. And I think a lot of people can relate to doing something compulsively despite it having negative consequences in your life. So whether that's our phones or being in relationships that aren't necessarily good for you, I wanted to broaden that definition of addiction and see how damaging it could be in one person's life, and make it funny and light and not quite so harrowing and heavy as a lot of addiction stories are, because I think lots of us can connect with that, and it's important to humanize addiction, I think.
But addiction is heavy, isn't it?
Not always. I mean, I think even the heaviest things can have moments of levity and humor in them, right? That's a very human thing. I've been in the middle of breakups, really intense, everybody crying, and then somebody says something funny and you laugh for a minute. I think that's very true to or at least my life.
Well, I read an article, and in the article you said that addiction is mundane. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think that's what I mean about what I said about broadening the definition to include anything that we're doing compulsively despite knowing the negative consequences. And that could be very mundane things, right? We all know that social media is not great for our brains. We know that eating tons of crisps are not great for our bodies, but we do it, as a means of self-soothing, which is not always a bad thing at all. But yeah.
In Feel Good, there's a lot of tension between Mae, the character, and her family. What is behind that tension?
In the show?
Yes.
In the show, I think, she's had a very tumultuous adolescence and 20s, and moved to a new country and hasn't seen her parents in a couple of years. And I guess there's a big disparity in the type of child that her parents anticipated having and the type of child that they've ended up having, or the type of adult they've ended up having. So yeah, they're both trying to get along, but they have very different methods of communication and coping. So they butt heads a lot.
And in Feel Good, Lisa Kudrow plays your mom. Are there any parallels between her character and your mother?
The parallels are that they're both highly intelligent. They both are very powerful women. They, a lot of my inner monologue is just my mom's voice. She's a very powerful influence in my life, and so I obviously I worry about her approval and that kind of thing. So that's a parallel. But my mom we're very close, and she's very warm and lovely and supportive. So no, it wouldn't be funny to depict great parents. You got to dial up the conflict to get the drama and the humor.
Now, I don't want to get too much in your business, but
here we go.
Here we go. But in the show, you have said the show is similar to your life. In the show, Mae left home while she was kicked out of her home when she was 15 or 16. Did that happen to you?
Yeah. I had very tumultuous teens. Yeah, for sure. That's true. In Toronto and in the comedy community. I started doing comedy when I was about 13. And then, it's a very adult world. And I went pretty far off the rails, I'd say. Yeah. And then got myself together when I was about 20. So yeah, those are parallels.
Well, I mean, the fact that you're saying that you got yourself together at 20 is something, because there's a lot of people like myself in my 40s still trying to figure it out. But let's just go back a little bit.
Me too.
How did
Yeah, me
you
too.
at 13? At 13, when I look back, at 13, I think I was writing in my diary about why Jeremy doesn't like me, and I'm pretty sure that's what I was doing. How did you end up doing comedy at 13?
I think about it a lot and ask that same question. I think it must have been, my parents are both really into comedy. They're both very funny and raised me watching comedy and took me to comedy clubs and stuff. And I guess maybe there's some, if I really psychoanalyzed it, there's some need for approval and attention, but it was just something that I was good at. And I found a community of people who were not only saying the things about themselves that made them different and weird, but being applauded for that and getting laughs and validation, which is very different to your average high school experience, right? Where everything weird about you is beaten down and you want to blend in. So it was nice for me to find this group of people where I could just be the weirdo that I was inside. And yeah, I just loved it.
Would it be fair to say that maybe that it was your first community? Because I'm thinking if you're growing up in Toronto, and I don't know when you realized that you were queer, but if you probably felt that you didn't fit in, and then at 13, like I'm just trying to picture you walking into like a comedy club and getting on stage, and people be like, okay, there's a 13-year-old like doing her thing.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that maybe that was the first community that you found?
Yeah, maybe. Well, I had a lot of friends, and I was always in the school plays and stuff, and really extroverted. And then I think once I found those improv classes at Second City and met like-minded kids who were a bunch of oddballs, then after I did a couple of shows professionally, then it snowballed very quickly, because I think there was, I think I got a lot of attention for being so young. So there was a novelty factor there. So then then it snowballs.
and when you were getting into comedy, who were some of the people that you looked to as inspiration?
Well, I had two spheres of influence, because I had my dad, who's British, and so he brought me up on Monty Python and the Goon Show and people like that. And then my mom, who loved Steve Martin and SCTV and the Kids in the Hall. And the Kids in the Hall were huge for me. I saw them at Massey Hall live when I was 13, and they just seemed like rock stars to me. They're a Canadian sketch comedy troupe. And then when I started performing at Second City, there were people that I idolized there, like Carolyn Taylor, who's in a TV show now called Baroness Von Sketch Show. And she was a real idol and is now one of my best friends. And we've been friends for 20 years now, since I was 13. So yeah.
And what has the transition been like for you from moving from, obviously you're still doing the comedy, but from moving from being on the stage to being an actor?
I was so nervous. I was terrified. I was just really lucky that I knew what I needed. So I really insisted on having a long rehearsal process and casting people that I found really funny, and having a director I was really comfortable with. And then I absolutely loved it, because I started doing sketch and improv when I was really young. And then I've been doing stand-ups for so long, which is such a solitary endeavor. And it's so nice to finish filming for the day and then go for a meal with everyone, instead of just going back to your hotel room on tour alone.
I find it interesting that you said that you were nervous about doing a show, because I'm thinking probably the most terrifying thing for most people would be to stand on stage by themselves and then be able to see everybody's face as to whether or not what you're doing is resonating. So why were you nervous about about moving into the acting world?
Well, for one thing, I think with stand-up, I'm totally in control, because I'm the only person on stage. So I know if it goes really badly, I could theoretically just run out the door. But with acting, there's expressing your emotions without irony is pretty scary, being vulnerable in that way. And then also there's all these variables of other actors and responding to them and what they're doing and connecting with people. And then you add the element of having your hero, Lisa Kudrow, acting opposite you, which is really daunting, but luckily she was really so sweet to me. So that was nice.
You both had such a great chemistry. It was believable that you were mother and daughter.
I think so. Yeah, I think we kind of almost look alike in a way, or our mannerisms or something. Yeah, it was perfect.
Now, it's weird to say this, 20 years you've been in the business, and I'm sure you've seen many changes along the way. How has the comedy circuit changed since you started at 13?
I think the culture the comedy culture has changed a lot, which is great, because I remember when I started as a young teen, and I'd be performing at Yuck Yucks or something, and I'd have to go up after an act who was being homophobic or racist or sexist and doing really well. Like, the audience was loving it, and then I'd have to go up after them and feel a bit like I had to apologize for who I was, or kind of bridge this awkward tone in the room. And now, comedy audiences are a great microcosm for what's going on in society, right? And what they laugh at and what they don't. So now, definitely, if you were to say something homophobic on stage, you'd get booed and the audience would not be behind you. So that's a huge shift, and thank God, right? And then also just, I think, in green rooms and in terms of like sexual misconduct and a general atmosphere of sexual threat, that's changing slowly. There's now backstage at Just for Laughs, for instance, there's a code of conduct typed out, and there's no tolerance for that kind of behavior. So that's, yeah. I feel like it's weird to think, it sounds like I'm talking about the 1970s, but we're talking about the early 2000s. It's crazy, this huge shift, which has made us all realize how far we had to go.
And how much further we still need to go.
Absolutely.
Considering everything that you were struggling with behind the scenes, looking back now, hindsight being 2020, what do you think it was about you that helped you get through not only the struggles that you were dealing with, addiction, but also what you were dealing with in your own professional world to get to the point that you are now?
Two things, I think. One thing is I'm a true comedy fan, and I'm just really lucky that I'm passionate about comedy, and for all those negative things that I just said about green rooms and that atmosphere, there are also amazingly talented and funny and kind and supportive people in that community. So, there's rocks there that support you, and then also I'm like embarrassingly ambitious. So I think ambition, thank God, has got me through. And
why is that embarrassing?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Isn't it a good thing to be ambitious?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why I said that. Yeah, it is good. I guess it's kind of frowned upon to be like, I want to take over the world, but I do.
Well, Mr. Burns from The Simpsons is,
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
One thing that I have noticed is that during what's been happening in the world, that people, I work in the media, but we've also done shows on segments on this show talking about how it seems like the public is trusting comedians more than media. What do you attribute that to?
Well, if you look at our world's leaders, it's tricky to know where to turn. I definitely would not advise looking to comedians for your political content, or I think now particularly it's really, really important that we're all seeking out activists, seeking out information and statistics and arming ourselves with this knowledge. I've been learning a lot recently, but I guess it makes sense that comedy's always been a kind of counterculture thing, and a place where subversive commentary can take place. So, you know, as far back as Lenny Bruce or whatever, or Richard Pryor, and so that it makes sense that we're able to criticize the, you know, the status quo and the people in power. But I definitely think that you're going to wade into dangerous territory if you're holding comedians up as kind of the sources of all your news and your, yeah, definitely you gotta go out and find the activists.
Well, I guess now it's become, social media has become a place where myself, you, anyone can express their views. And recently, someone who you admired because you're a Harry Potter fan, J.K. Rowling tweeted something, and then you tweeted a response. You tweeted, "I can't believe that in this moment at J.K. Rowling has decided the most useful thing to tweet to her 14.5 million followers is willfully pandemic, gender critical turf nonsense. The world is full of threats worth fighting against. Trans people are not a threat. Hashtag trans women are women." What were you responding to?
I'm sure most people are aware of this at this point, that she went on a kind of, you know, you have to be so careful how you phrase things. I guess J.K. Rowling subscribes to this small group of feminists who believe that trans rights are a threat to cisgendered women's rights, and so she was speaking out, and she's written an essay recently, actually, about, it's full of misinformation, and it's about the threat of trans women being in single-sex spaces like bathrooms and things like that, and a lot of kind of, do you call it straw man arguments? Like she was saying that trans people don't believe in biology, and it's just incorrect. And I really see, especially in the UK right now, there's a real hysteria around trans rights. They're currently, actually J.K. Rowling's business partner, who's the co-founder of her charity, is currently campaigning to get trans rights removed from the Equality Act. So it's really a scary time, and it's all hysteria. Trans people are 0.6% of the population. They're disproportionately at risk of violence and suicide and abuse. And so it's just, I think we're going to look back and see how ridiculous it is that someone with her platform was using this moment where we're sort of supposed to be talking about race. And she used the moment to talk about, you know, the threat of trans women who are just being murdered all the time. It's just crazy. I don't know. I could go on for hours.
Well, I mean, the reason I brought it up is because it was, as you said, she has a huge platform. And when you compare the platform she has to yours, I thought it was interesting that you decided to weigh in. So I guess my question was, why did you decide to weigh into that particular comment?
You know, there aren't many areas that I would feel confident enough to weigh in like that, but I have done loads of research, and I wrote a book for teens about gender and sexuality called "Can Everyone Please Calm Down?" And I do, in this instance, in this one area, I do feel pretty confident that that I'm right. And I also have a lot of vulnerable LGBT kids who are my followers and who come to my shows. And I mean, I myself experience a lot of panic in women's bathrooms with people challenging me on my gender identity. So yeah, it matters to me. So, you know, that's my cause that I picked recently to weigh in on.
Well, June is Pride Month, and this year, obviously, it looks very different because of COVID-19 being a global pandemic. How did you celebrate Pride this year?
I mean, I haven't. It's, you know, I guess Pride started as a protest, and this year more than ever, it feels like a protest. It feels like, yeah, we're in scary times. So, I mean, I celebrate in my own way by trying to be proud and vocal and create content that people can connect with. And then, I really believe in intersectionality. So I think that it's a really good time for the LGBT community to come out and support Black Lives Matter and trans women and those kinds of things too. So there's a lot going on. It's definitely not the party that it usually is, but that's important. That's good. This is how we make change.
And also too, the fact that art, I think we've all come to appreciate how art can be political, how art can be a form of protest. When we talk about representation mattering, how valuable would a show like Feel Good have been for you when you were growing up?
That's nice. I mean, I think it would have been really, I think it would have made a difference, because growing up, it really was just Ellen who looked like me. And then I remember on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, there was a lesbian witch. But I think what I would have appreciated is the nuance of identity. Like I'm bisexual, I'm non-binary, and I haven't seen a lot of that. So yeah, it would have, and also I think it would have meant a lot to me that that there was a queer show that people of all demographics were into, that I could have watched with my parents, or, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, as a fan of the show, because we've run out of time, I'm hoping that maybe you can give us a little bit of a scoop whether or not there's going to be a season 2 of Feel Good.
Listen, I'm desperate. I'm writing scripts. So if you did like the show, then now actually would be a really helpful time to tweet at Netflix and let them know.
We'll do my part.
Yeah,
Mae Martin, it's been so nice to meet you. Continued success, and thank you so much for the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for talking to me.
And that's it for tonight's Agenda in the Summer. I'm Nam Kiwanuka. Thanks for watching TVO and for joining us online at tvo.org. And we'll see you again next time.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
The Agenda is always on. To catch up on conversations from this week or any week, visit our website, tvo.org/theagenda, or our YouTube page at youtube.com/theagenda. It's all there for whenever you want to watch.